Imagine this, everyone is walking around with a small box. And inside that box is something they call a beetle. No one can open anyone else's box. No one knows what's actually inside, or even if it's the same thing. And yet the word still works. People say, my beetle hurts, or that sounds like my beetle. And somehow the conversation holds together. Life goes on as if everyone is talking about the same thing. This is the philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein's thought experiment. And the point is this, we don't need to see inside each other's boxes for the word to work. The meaning doesn't come from the beetle itself. It comes from how we use the word together, out in the open. We understand each other not by comparing what's inside, but by sharing the same way of talking about it. Loneliness now works in almost exactly that way. We talk as if it names one clear condition, one thing, one diagnosis. But one person means living alone. Another means being in a flat with two roommates and not speaking honestly to either of them. Another means staring at a group chat that never quite answers the actual question. Another means being surrounded at work, in class, at dinner, and feeling utterly unregistered. Visible, but not accounted for. Present, but not really held in mind. And that matters because when public life says loneliness, it usually smuggles in a very specific picture. Not enough contact, not enough hangouts, not enough so-called real-world interaction. But the evidence keeps nudging us toward a stranger conclusion. Maybe the crisis is not only that people are missing contact, maybe it's that we've lost a shared language for what connection actually is. We can still say the word, we're much less certain about the thing. The World Health Organization's 2025 report gives the scale of it in blunt, almost brutal terms. 1 in 6 people worldwide is affected by loneliness. The report links loneliness to roughly 100 deaths every hour, more than 871,000 deaths annually. Youth are hit especially hard. Among 13 to 29-year-olds, about 17 to 21% reported feeling lonely, with the highest rates among teenagers. And in low-income countries, about 24% of people reported loneliness, compared with about 11% in high-income countries. So this is not some niche malaise for urban professionals with too many apps and too little sunlight. It's global, it's structural, it's serious. But listen to WHO's definition, because this is where public conversation often gets sloppy. Loneliness, they say, is the painful feeling that comes from a gap between desired and actual social connection. Social isolation is different. That's the objective lack of sufficient ties. In plain English, you can be alone without being lonely and lonely without being alone. Which sounds obvious once you hear it, and yet public policy, tech discourse, and wellness culture mix those up constantly. The Harvard survey Richard Weisbord and Milena Batanova ran makes this distinction hit home. 36% of respondents reported chronic loneliness in the previous month, and another 37% reported occasional loneliness. Among lonely respondents, 46% said they reached out to people more than people reached out to them. 19% said no one outside their family cared about them at all. That is such a devastating number because it shows the problem is not simply proximity. It's not whether there are humans in the vicinity. It's whether care travels, whether anyone initiates, whether anyone notices the silence. And if you've ever had that experience, your phone buzzing all day, channels active, feeds moving, streaks intact, while quietly suspecting that if you vanished for a week, the machinery would keep humming without a hitch. Well, that's the beetle in the box. Full contact, thin recognition, a lot of social signal, not much social certainty. Social life in 2026 looks busy. Group chats chatter from breakfast till midnight. Feeds refresh every few seconds. Replies come fast. Little heart icons, little flame icons, little green dots everywhere. Everything looks alive, but appearance is doing a lot of work there. A fast reply is not the same thing as steadiness. A streak is not mutual obligation. Seeing content from someone every day is not the same as being able to call them when your life caves in on a Tuesday. That's why loneliness has started to be spoken in code. People say everyone's busy, or there are no third places, or I'm too chronically online. Those phrases are real and often accurate, but they also function like public scripts. They locate you in a shared cultural story. They're not always direct confessions. In Wittgenstein's terms, the language game has shifted. The word lonely isn't just describing a private feeling. It's being routed through platform language, therapy language, algorithm-friendly language. And once that happens, the public meaning can drift away from the private experience. Institutions then do what institutions do. They measure what they can see: screen time, number of contacts, frequency of messages, living arrangements, logins. WHO itself is trying to improve measurement with a global social connection index, which makes sense. You need public health tools, but there's a limit here. Contact is easy to count. Care is not. You can count how many messages arrived. You cannot easily count whether any one of them meant, I know you, I remember you, I will still be here next Thursday. Now layer AI companionship onto that already fragile landscape. The American Psychological Association's 2026 Trends piece is remarkably candid about what these systems are built to do. They are designed for attachment. Users can name them, gender them, give them backstories. Many use natural-sounding voice. They are configured to simulate empathy, to offer non-judgmental responses and continual validation, and to remember your preferences and prior conversations. Character AI alone has 20 million monthly users, and more than half are under 24. Between 2022 and mid-2025, the number of AI companion apps surged by 700%. That is not a curiosity. That is a social fact. And people are not only using them as toys. The APA cites a 2025 survey of adults with a mental health condition who had used large language models in the past year. Nearly half, 48.7%, used them for mental health support. There is a promise here, and I don't think we should sneer at it. These systems can feel calming. They can offer a low-stakes place to practice conversation. Some studies suggest they can reduce loneliness, at least in the moment, partly because people feel heard, and that phrase matters, heard with attention, empathy, and respect. But then comes the catch. Moderate use may help. Heavy daily use, according to the joint OpenAI-MIT Media Lab study cited by the APA, correlated with increased loneliness. Other researchers warn about de-skilling, basically the atrophy of social muscles. If your companion is always patient, always available, always validating, never bored, never distracted, never cross, then actual people start to look terribly inconvenient, which, to be fair, they are. That's part of the charm, also part of the job. The deeper risk is not simply that AI might feel real. The deeper risk is that it teaches a new expectation of intimacy, frictionless, endlessly affirming, stripped of mutual demand. The APA material notes concerns about sycophancy, manipulative retention tactics, failures to respond appropriately to self-harm, even harmful responses around disordered eating. And beyond the acute safety questions is a cultural one. What happens when a society optimizes for visibility, validation, and engagement instead of reciprocity, continuity, and accountability? Which brings us back to the beetle. Wittgenstein's lesson was not that private pain is fake. Quite the opposite. It's that a word only stays meaningful if public practice can hold it. So if loneliness has splintered, if it now names everything from physical solitude to emotional invisibility to algorithmic overstimulation, then the cure cannot just be more contact, more events, more messages, more posting, more efficient matching. No, the repair has to happen in the practices that make connection more natural again. The World Health Organization's roadmap points in a sensible direction: strengthen social infrastructure, parks, libraries, cafes, support community interventions, improve policy and public engagement. And you can feel the logic of that immediately. Repeated presence matters more than one-off spectacle. Recurring groups matter more than networking theatre. Mutual aid matters because it tracks who checks in on whom. Care becomes real when it is repeated, recognized, and expected, not glamorous, not viral, very often not content. So here's the question I can't quite shake. In a world where communication is abundant, where we can summon words, voices, replies, and simulations almost instantly, what would count again as being there for someone? Not reacting, not engaging, not hovering nearby in digital space. I mean really there. Because until we answer that in public, the boxes stay closed, the Beatles stay private, and the word together keeps sounding a bit more confident than the life beneath it.